Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back in another video from the Salad Bar, and today we are checking out how far can cars get in Dragon Ball. So we've already done how far can cars get in JJK, haven't we? And if you to power scale the verses, I'd say Dragon Ball is, it's up there. It's stronger than JJK. So I don't think cars is going to get too far. I'd say if we're going original Dragon Ball, potentially yes. I think possibly just before Frieza. I don't know. I don't see him getting too. I don't see him going too high. But I am not the scaler, and I'm usually proven wrong. So let's see where we go here.
Cars was regarded as the ultimate thing in his series. Would that remain true if we put him in Dragon Ball, though? Let's place him up against a Dragon Ball gauntlet of sorts. A little bit different from the ones we normally do. Dragon Ball already had its own perfect life form, but let's see how they handle the ultimate life form. Like my other gauntlets, this one will have two phases, with the first one covering how far he goes with his standard power based on what we've actually seen. The second phase will be more hypothetical, covering his specific abilities and how far they could potentially take him, although it's a bit more based on assumptions.
Right.
First, we have a quick rundown of Cars' abilities, as well as the power that he's starting out with. I'll keep the scaling brief because Dragon Ball has such a huge jump in power early on, and no matter where you place certain characters, they get outdone pretty much immediately.
Yeah, pretty early. It's mad, isn't it? Cars was like the ultimate life form, and we did not get to see his full potential whatsoever. I'm sure I've said that numerous times, but so random. I think it's bizarre that we never had anything to do with Cars later on down the line as well.
Let's begin with his stats. Cars is physically one of the strongest JoJo characters in his original verse. Of course, other characters do have powerful hacks from their stands, but in terms of actual raw power, just physical strength alone, Cars is at the top of that. In my videos, I tend to scale him between city level and mountain level, and because he physically scales above so many other JoJo characters, he's also massively faster than light, somewhere in the hundreds of times faster than light range. And even
still, speed-wise, I still think he's getting blitzed by a lot of Dragon Ball characters.
Other characters in later parts, he has his own faster than light feats. So, even though he's not really strong in comparison to a lot of Dragon Ball characters, he is pretty fast. Again, physical power doesn't really matter much here, but speed kind of does, because Dragon Ball gets really strong really quick, but in terms of speed, a lot of these crazy faster than light, massively faster than light things, that's later on in the Z portion of the series.
Is it though? Is it?
But we're not too focused on stats here. More so, we're concerned about what Cars is capable of, his abilities. So let's go through them real quick. Cars is immortal. You can defeat him by sending him into space, which causes him to get frozen up and just not be able to move, but you're going to have a really hard time killing him.
Yeah.
It's not impossible, but his regeneration makes it really tough. It's not as crazy as someone like Cell, for example, who could regenerate from a single cell, but still, it's really good because at worst, it's stated that he can still be alive as dust. Cars can also kind of possess people by going into their body and then controlling them that way. His body is capable of a lot of weird things like digesting other people through acid, and absorbing them that way too. And in case it wasn't clear, in this
that scene was so weird, playing Lisa's leg like a guitar.
video,
Like,
was
what the
ultimate
fuck
Cars,
else
so this is
going
him
on?
at the end of part 2, at his strongest. He already did have body manipulation before, like he can contort it in all weird ways, but at this point he could do even more things with it, like biological manipulation. He could use the abilities of any organism on Earth, and we'll get more into that later on. But it's so potent that he can manipulate himself on a cellular level, allowing him to manipulate his cells to be that of any organism, which means he could shapeshift as well. Cars is also insanely intelligent. His IQ is 400.
What I've noticed with these power scaling videos is there's certain points they'll use to further back up arguments later down the line. And I feel like that being able to manipulate his body to a cellular level thing is something that's going to come up.
Beyond having a great IQ,
Don't
he
know
has great
how.
senses too. Besides being able to do everything that any animal on Earth is capable of, his senses are just crazy to begin with. Like, for reference, his eyes are compared to a space telescope. He also has access to Hamon, and he's the strongest user of it in the series. And most importantly, Cars is really adaptable. Given his great intelligence and all his crazy abilities, that's a deadly combination because he could adapt to pretty much any sort of situation that he needs to adapt to, growing and evolving within the moment, and easily strategizing. So, now that we got a baseline of what he's capable of and how strong he is, let's start the gauntlet himself.
Let's go.
First phase, just looking at his standard powers, seeing physically what he can contend with. So in this phase, we're assuming Cars isn't going to pull any crazy stunt like learning Ki on a whim or turning himself into a Saiyan or whatever.
Okay.
Just based on raw power alone, let's see how far he goes based on that. This part will be more objective because it's based on actual strength and not hypotheticals. The first few are
This is proper power scaling to the
Cars aren't really an
max.
issue for him. Roshi poses the biggest threat at max power, but he's way too slow for Cars. Cars outspeeds pretty much everyone until we get to the end of Namek, so in terms of speed, he's fine here. His combat and reactions are hundreds of times the speed of light, and because of that, he won't get matched until that point. But in terms of power, well, he starts facing issues around the 22nd World Tournament because pretty much every top tier character there is a Moonbuster. But his speed will definitely be helpful, and if he's not completely destroyed in one shot, he can regenerate. Of course, any of these Moonbusting characters have the potential to destroy him in one shot, but if they leave some dust from him behind, he can come
He's
back.
just coming back.
Moonbusting
Okay.
is definitely way too much for him to handle, but what's the point if he could just dodge
Dodge.
anything really easily? It's like putting a squirrel against a car. Yeah, the car's just gonna eviscerate the squirrel. But what if that car is only going 20 miles an hour and that squirrel is going like 5,000 miles per hour or something? Ridiculous analogy, I know, but it's kind of what would happen. The
Yeah, that's
car's
quite
just
funny.
not gonna hit the squirrel. If it does, the squirrel is screwed, but it won't get hit. Anyways, by this point in the story, raw power won't be enough, so Cars can survive, but he cannot fight. At least not in traditional terms. He probably does have some ways to combat others, but for that we would have to delve into his abilities. So, I guess now's the point where Phase 2 starts.
Where he starts creating evil squirrels from his hands.
I know what you're all here for. With his abilities and adaptation, where could he get to? Before we delve into the hypotheticals of what he can accomplish, there's a brief detour we need to make in regards to what he could transform into. Cars can mimic everything that lives on Earth. I know all of you are thinking right now. If we're throwing him into Dragon Ball, could he adapt his DNA to other life forms in it? Well, it depends.
Like dinosaurs and stuff, and... where's he going with this, actually?
Assuming we just throw him into Dragon Ball and he has no prior knowledge of any of the species here, I think he could at least adapt his Saiyan DNA. If he was from the verse, then he would definitely have Saiyan DNA and Namekian DNA, because Goku, Kami, Piccolo, everyone that was previously on Earth. But let's go with the former because that's more conservative. We're just throwing him in here and he has no knowledge of
There
anything.
we are, the cellular manipulation of his body. Giving him Saiyan and Namekian cells. Ugh!
As for Saiyan DNA, there is one big thing to consider. Saiyans and humans can have kids together. I swear this is
Yes.
going somewhere. We're going to be applying real-world
I don't know. I can't. What? Okay.
science here, which might not fit Dragon Ball, but we often do that for power scaling anyways, so it's kind of fair to do the same here. This isn't a one-off case either. In canon, we've seen Goku and Vegeta obviously have kids with humans,
Yes.
and even down the line, Gohan had his own kid. Plus, while it's not part of the same continuity, we've seen the lineage of Hyper Saiyans extend very far. to
Get it
Goku
off my
Jr. and Vegeta
screen.
Jr., which I know you're
Get
probably
it
going to say
gone.
not canon, but still worth mentioning because every part of the series,
Well, apparently GT is canon, but...
no matter what continuity it's from, it considers Saiyans and humans to be fully compatible in terms of mating.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
This
yeah,
means
we get
Saiyans
that.
are biologically
We know
very
this.
similar to humans. They can have multiple health.
Where is this argument
kids together with no
this
problems,
point going?
which requires very little variance in DNA. Sure, maybe Saiyans are like Filtramites and they could just reproduce with anything, but funny enough, Toriyama had said before that Kais may frequently split up species and transport them around planets. So not only are Saiyans and humans genetically really close, but there is a very real chance that they might have a common ancestor. In short, this
Okay.
means Cars should be able to adapt his Saiyan DNA very easily, even if we don't give him that right off the bat. That Saiyan sex ed lesson had a purpose. This
Okay.
has insane implications because Saiyans, of course, are pretty powerful by default. But more importantly, this gives him access to Zenkai boost and even transformations.
Oh my god, we're giving Cars so much stuff here.
Combine that with regen and, well, we saw what happened with Cell. On top of that, Cars might actually be able to use alien DNA. This is more contentious but worth mentioning. In the manga and the anime's diagram of Cars, as well as Araki's input from JoJo 6251, it's stated that Cars can use abilities from all living things. It's a vague statement, but aliens do exist in JoJo, and if you interpret this
True. Okay.
Cars shouldn't just be
Alright.
limited to Earth. It's every living thing.
That is a fair comment. That's a fair comment. Aliens do exist in JoJo's.
Textually, it seems to apply to Earth, though, and of course, by this point in the story, aliens weren't shown in JoJo, and we don't know if Cars has prior knowledge of them or not. It's not like he could just automatically become something he's never seen before. So, because of how vague and arguable this is, and the fact that this won't matter too much anyways, we'll just go with it being Earth life forms and Saiyans, considering how close they are to humans. But just having Saiyan DNA won't make him strong by default. He would also need to learn about Ki first. The good thing is, though, he should be able to adapt to and learn Ki. Pretty easily, in fact. Normal humans in Dragon Ball can learn about Ki, and Cars is far beyond a normal human's capabilities and knowledge. When thrown into this verse, even if he's just starting at 0 with Ki, right away his senses are far better than any other human, and he could detect things normal people can't. This could easily lead him down the path to sensing Ki, then learning it for himself. It shouldn't be hard for a 400 IQ vampire that could duplicate anything humans can do, and someone who did the same with Hamon already. I don't think either of those things are crazy to say because with Ki, that is basically a given considering Cars could do anything a human could do but better.
Okay.
As for the Saiyan DNA, it's not a crazy stretch. Cars also can evolve from battles regardless, so even if adapting to alien DNA might be a bit of a stretch, and the fact that we don't want to pull a no limits fallacy and say he can copy everyone's DNA, we'll just stop it at Saiyan DNA, which is pretty reasonable in my eyes. By the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, hit a hormone overdrive on that like button. It really does help out the channel and gives me good
Overdrive.
feedback. So, with that detour out of the way, where could he go from here? Using Saiyan DNA and Ki for himself, alongside all his other adaptations and strategies, Cars could probably carry himself all the way through Namek with no problems, since he already is faster and now will
I mean, I did kind of say at the start, didn't I? I reckon he's up to like Freezer at the
have
end.
the same strength as everyone
Point,
else.
yeah.
And when his strength grows, his speed would too. But that's all assuming he actually has the time to train and prepare. Now the question is completely different. How long could he keep up with everyone for? This part is a lot less objective and more subjective, but we do have some things to work off of. Knowing his adaptation, intelligence, and access to Saiyan abilities like Zenkai's, he will be really hard to kill at first. Again, assuming he has time to train and prepare. Like, if we just gave Cars some Ki and Saiyan DNA and throw him against full power Frieza on Namek, he's cooked immediately. He doesn't instantly just grow strong by being a Saiyan. None of that matters if he doesn't have time to grow.
Right, so
let's
actually
do it a bit
train
different in
and
this video.
right,
This section
Zenkai
of the video is
boosts,
more like
etc.
what if Cars was
Okay.
part of the Dragon Ball verse. Would he be able to make it through everything if he took Goku's place and had the same amount of training? Like I said, nothing up to Namek would be a struggle because with that same amount of training, Cars would definitely grow beyond all the other villains around him. And pretty much by default, he outspeeds a lot of them. Once we get to Namek, that's where things get a little bit more convoluted. Ginyu does pose a threat, but with Cars' intelligence, he could find a way. Ginyu would probably try to take Cars' body, but Cars won't even let that happen in the first place given his smarts and speed.
He's intelligent, very
Ginyu
smart, Cars,
is to
yeah.
learn how Ginyu did it, and then replicate it himself. Very much a hypothetical, but funny thing to note. It's definitely better than his own possession too. But anyways, once Cars gets past this, what's next? Well, of course he could regenerate, so if he does take any damage, he's just gonna grow from it, and he'll heal himself. Exploiting Zenkai's would be really hard because he can't just injure himself and then grow back from that. Like Vegeta showed on Namek, you have to have someone else injure you. So maybe he could utilize that during these fights.
Yeah,
Once he
it was
gets
the moment with Krillin, wasn't it? It was like, I need you to blast me, but don't kill me.
Frieza, he wouldn't counter an issue.
And then Dende's just
Goku
like,
would
I'm not
be able
healing
to
you.
Frieza and have to utilize the Kaioken and Spirit Bomb, the latter of which Cars wouldn't even be capable of. And the former, Cars could do, but only if he actually knew about it. He has Saiyan DNA, but he doesn't just have every Goku ability right off the bat. So, assuming he got to Goku's level of power here, how is he going to fight Frieza? Because Frieza's stronger now. There is a way. Given Cars' grasp on his own biology, there's a chance he could just figure out how to transform on his own. Yes, I mean, he could just transform into Super Saiyan. As much as people might not like the whole S-cells thing, it's important here because Cars wouldn't have a lot of them right off the bat. But what stops him from just creating more? As we've discussed, Cars can manipulate anything with his cells. And at least part of
I knew it. I knew there was a reason that point was so like, because that's where it's completely going in the direction of this. It's he could control his cells to, you know, he can completely manipulate his atoms and everything. So once he gets these Saiyan cells, he'll be able to like completely manipulate his body into just like being a Saiyan, and then just like Zenkai boost and turn Super Saiyan during a really epic moment, and then he's Super Saiyan now. So now he's got a 10-time multiplier, and it's just like,
Super
wow.
Saiyan is based on genetics. So, Cars gives himself Saiyan DNA, figures out how to push himself farther, discovers his own S cells, and then replicates them. Then, Cars figures out how to go Super Saiyan,
There you go.
realizing that if he excites these cells, he's able to transform. Then we have Super Saiyan Cars versus Frieza. He wins. Even when we just limit his DNA to Saiyans, he's still really cracked. Now, Frieza could probably just stop him by destroying Namek. I mean, Cars won't die in space like Goku, for example, but we've seen what happens when he gets sent into space. He just freezes up, and
Yeah.
that essentially does defeat him. Unless he's somehow able to copy Frieza, space is a pretty surefire defeat for him. So, Cars has a way to make it past this, but it's not a guarantee. It's not like it's going to be an easy fight. Let's move on to the Android saga and assume he's also grown strong enough here to actually fight the androids given the same amount of training. The androids
It's
aren't
just a
really gonna do
weird
anything.
video this now.
They're gonna get energy from him, they'll give some help, but they're not going to be smart enough to outplay him.
Now we've just got Cars being a Super Saiyan and just training like a Z fighter, and it's not actually Cars anymore, but okay.
But now things get weird because what's he going to do with Super Saiyan by this point? If he has had more training, would he be smart enough to figure out how to master Super Saiyan faster than anybody else did in the story? Better yet, go beyond it? Considering Cars' IQ and how intricately he can manipulate his cells, there is a very real chance that he's able to do this. Accessing the different grades of Super Saiyan and maybe even Super Saiyan 2. Or 3 even. But let's keep it simple for now and say he's just moving along and he's able to keep up in terms of power, and we'll just place him wherever Goku is. I mean, that's pretty reasonable. Both are geniuses, at least when it comes to combat for Goku. Cars versus Cell would be kind of funny
Excuse
because,
me.
you know, ultimate life form versus perfect life form, both genetic masterpieces with regeneration. Cell's regeneration is much better than Car's since he can come back from a single cell. For Car's, he requires at least dust to come back from, if not more. Cell could also do the whole blow up Earth thing too, and this would be a lot easier for him. Like, if Cell self-destructs, which is pretty likely, we've already seen him do this before, then he wins. He might get desperate in the fight and then blow himself up. Cars wouldn't be able to do anything about it, because he can't teleport away. He's stuck on Earth, and when it's gone, he's frozen in space. Or maybe he gets caught up in the explosion and that just kills him, completely eviscerating him. That is a really easy win condition for Cell right there, and a very likely one too, because that's exactly what happened in the main story. If he's just fighting Cell one-on-one, and Cell gets really desperate, Cars is going to lose here. But it's not a surefire loss for him because, again, knowing Cars' adaptability...
There's 3 minutes and something left. We're going into the Boo saga here.
...knowledge, as well as his great senses. After fighting Cell for a bit, he'd probably figure out how his regeneration works. And while Cell can survive as just a single cell, if that core is destroyed, then that kills Cell. So Cars could easily just figure out how to do that, locating the source of his regeneration and just stopping it for good. Well, what about the Boo saga? First
God,
off,
this is
Bob
crazy! No!
really have to count for magic because that's not something he could just adapt to right away. There is some magic on Earth, but Cars hasn't encountered that yet. And if he has, it's definitely not to the level of Bobbity's. More important is the fact that Bobbity could try and take over his mind, and I wonder how susceptible Cars would be. He's definitely evil enough for this to work on him, but we don't know how Bobbity's mind control will interact with a smart mind like his, or if Cars would find some way around that. Also, against Boo, that would be a really tough fight because Boo has even greater regen than Cell and access to magic too. Granted, it's not as crazy as Bobbity, but it makes me wonder how he would react to this. And could he replicate magic? Maybe, but again, he's never seen it before. One good thing is if Cars is hit by a candy beam, he could at least turn himself back to normal with his own body manipulation, so he can counter that. Although if he's turned to stone by Deborah, he could probably quickly counter that by cutting one of his body parts off. But as we saw in part 2, petrification kinda does work on him in the first place. I feel like Cars would be smart enough and fast enough to work around that, realizing what's happening before it's too late and having a way to counter it. But if Deborah just spits a bunch on him and gets a lucky shot in his head, maybe that could win. So by this point in the story, the fights are really up in the air because it depends on what Cars can do, and I don't want to get too much into the hypothetical because we're already kind of far in there. And
We are so far into this
Cars win
hypothetical,
because
it's crazy.
he could. No, I don't want to do that. And once again, space is an option. If he ends up fighting Kid Boo, it's an instant loss. Kid Boo is single-minded.
Like, I do
and
get
will
this is a
probably just go
hypothetical thing, but it's like giving so much to it. It's like, what if you just turned Cars into a Super Saiyan?
destroy the planet right away. When he first appeared, that is exactly what he did. His first move might just be to blow up everything, and then Cars is screwed. And unlike Cell, stopping his regeneration is really hard because Cell at least has the...
It's kind of like saying Kakashi versus JJK, and then he goes in, uses his Sharingan, and because he's known as the copy ninja, he can then start throwing domain expansions around after seeing it. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Does that kind of like, you know, like Kakashi, the copy ninja, and he just throws his fingers up, domain expansion, unlimited void, and it's like, oh shit.
core that he could destroy. Boo can come back from pretty much nothing, and he doesn't have a defined core that he regenerates from. It's like if any little single piece of him is left, even if he has like a small cell of him somewhere else on the battlefield, that's going to be enough. And by Battle of Gods, I think it's safe to say...
Yeah, like, does Kakashi just watch Gojo do, like, freaking purple and reds and stuff, and then just start throwing them around with the hand signs and that? Does he watch Gojo use his, like, limitless while walking into someone and go, hey, I can do that now? Like,
Cars is stopped hard. So first off, it's not like he could just...
Because, like, hypothetically, if you had Gojo versus Kakashi just copies everything that Gojo does, and then just, like, on top of that has all his other techniques, because Gojo doesn't copy and learn stuff.
It's a new thing to him, awakened by training or ritual, and something that they didn't have prior knowledge of. So it's not something that Cars could just mutate, especially when he can't even sense it in the first place.
Why are we on
Cars
Super
does have a
Saiyan
great
God?
sense, but the Masters of Ki on Earth by this point were physically incapable of sensing it and manipulating it as well. At least until they obtain it themselves. Cars wouldn't have a way to get it for himself unless he does do the ritual, and he wouldn't fit that without the right kind of heart. And he would need other people in the first place to do so. He's in Goku's place here, so we'll put him up against Beerus, and he's not doing anything. He won't be able to become a god, and he'd likely just piss Beerus off if anything. Then he gets Hakkai'd, and he's done. Also, if we threw him up against Goku by this point, for example, he's not doing anything with the lack of godly ki. And if you want to say he finds a way to impress Beerus and somehow makes it to Resurrection F, by that point he's going to be power gapped so hard that it wouldn't even make a difference. So I think we could pretty safely say, with raw power alone, Cars makes it to the 22nd World Tournament. Most likely, relying a lot on his abilities. He can make it to Namek, but he's not really going to be doing much there unless he could actually
Yeah, I
fight
think
the
he makes it
Saiyans
to Namek.
and
Yeah.
basically become one of the ultimate
Hypothetical's
Goku
insane.
types. And if he is able to do that, then he could probably make it up to the Buu Saga and at best Battle of Gods, but he's not going further than that. It's a pretty fitting end. Cars is the ultimate life form in his world, but once we start seeing all the otherworldly and godly stuff in Dragon Ball Super, he's going to have issues. We could just go the cheap route and interpret the statement about him being able to replicate anything in the world as the universe as a whole, but I think that at least gives a somewhat grounded answer as to how far he could go in this verse. Keyword, somewhat, not fully grounded.
Excuse me.
Anyways, let me know what you think below. And as usual, be sure to be civil in the comments. We're just having a fun discussion here. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on my next video.
And you see, and I'm having fun reacting to it. Like, I hope that when people see me being all like, ugh, that would never happen, blah, 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 I'm just trying to have, like, fun with it. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be all like, this video is ridiculous. Ugh. It's like Death Battle yesterday. I was watching Death Battle and I was just like, no, that's so wrong. But, like, still just, I find it fun. I don't like just agreeing with the video the whole time. You know, just nodding and being, yes, I like to just be a little bit more sometimes. Like, if I start disagreeing with something, I think it's more entertaining to keep going with that and just being like, no. But yeah, like I like how it's like, you know, legit, he's getting to Namek. Hypothetically, he's going all the way through to the end of the boost. It's like, what? Because he can turn Super Saiyan and can manipulate his cells and that. You couldn't you? You could do a hypothetical with Kakashi going to JJK and then just like learning domain expansions by looking at it with Sharingan and like understanding curse techniques and stuff and everything. Anyway, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video, I want to be able to watch Patreon-only reactions, such as the original Dragon Ball series. Link in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is all I ask to help support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks for that. Thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch, discuss in future videos. I'll see you guys next time.